These five fingers, they go straight to the soul of man. The right hand, the hand of love. The story of life is this.
The heat you feel when you watch the movie, Do the Right Thing, is real. It pours off the screen, making you feel sweaty and tired, just like the people in the neighborhood. But what most fans never knew is that the heat wasn't just good acting or movie magic. It was the whole reason the movie was made. The story of Do the Right Thing didn't start in Hollywood. It started with a real story, a sad and angry one that happened on the streets of New York City. Origin of the story. It was December 1986 in a neighborhood called Howard Beach. A young black man named Michael Griffith and his friends had their car break down. They walked to a local pizzeria to get help. But when they left, a group of white men chased them with baseball bats, yelling hateful things. While running for his life, Michael Griffith was forced onto a highway where he was hit by a car and killed. This terrible event shook the city. It made a young filmmaker named Spike Lee feel like he had to do something. He was filled with a powerful need to tell a story about the anger and tension that was boiling over in his city. So he sat down and wrote. He didn't take months or years. He wrote the entire script for Do the Right Thing in just 2 weeks. He knew the story had to take place on one single block over one 24-hour period. And it had to be on the hottest day of the summer. The heat would be like a character in the movie, pushing everyone to their breaking point. To make this world feel real, Spike Lee and his team didn't just find a street to film on, they built one. They took over a block of Stuyvesant Avenue in a Brooklyn neighborhood called Bedford-Stuyvesant, or Bed-Stuy for short. They built Sal's famous pizzeria from nothing in an empty lot. They built the Korean grocery store next to it. They turned a real street into their stage. For 8 weeks in the summer of 1988, this one block became the whole world for the cast and crew. It was a world built from a real tragedy, and it would soon feel just as real and just as dangerous as the world outside. Secrets of the cast. When you watch a movie as perfect as Do the Right Thing, it's hard to imagine anyone else playing those parts. But the truth is, the cast we know and love almost looked very different. And many of the characters became who they are because the actors themselves poured their own ideas and secrets into them. The biggest secret is who almost played Sal, the owner of the pizzeria. Spike Lee's first choice was one of the most famous actors in the world, Robert De Niro. Spike and De Niro had even talked about the Howard Beach incident and the anger between black and Italian communities. Spike thought it would be powerful to have a star like De Niro play a character who was, in some ways, a good man caught in a bad situation. But De Niro said no. He felt like he had played characters like Sal before and wanted to do something new. His decision opened the door for another actor, Danny Aiello, to step in and make the role his own. And that's where the next secret comes in. In the original script, Sal was not the complicated man we see in the movie. He was a much simpler character, more of a straightforward racist. Danny Aiello read the script and knew that wasn't the whole story. He felt Sal should be a man who loved his neighborhood and the people in it, but who also had his own prejudices and a stubborn pride. Spike Lee listened. He trusted his actor and gave him an amazing amount of freedom. He told Danny, "Whatever you want to do, you do." Danny took that freedom and ran with it. He even wrote an entire scene for Sal and his son Pino himself just 10 minutes before they started filming it. That scene, where they talk alone in the pizzeria, is one of the most important in the movie, and it came directly from the heart of the actor playing the part. The actors playing Sal's sons also brought their own touches. John Turturro played Pino, the angry, racist son who hated working in a black neighborhood. To make Pino feel real, John wanted to be part of creating his look. He told the costume designer, Ruthie Carter, that he wanted to go shopping with his real-life mother to pick out Pino's clothes. It was his idea for Pino to show up for work in a fancy all-black outfit, showing how much he felt like an outsider in the neighborhood where he worked. Some characters weren't even supposed to be in the movie at all. The gentle character of Smiley, the young man with a stutter who sells pictures of Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, was never in the script. An actor named Roger Guenveur Smith wanted to be in the movie so badly that he showed up on the set every single day and asked Spike for a role. Finally, Spike told him to come up with his own character. So, Roger created Smiley from scratch. It was even Roger's idea for Smiley to be the one to put the picture of the two leaders on the wall of Sal's Pizzeria at the end as it burned to the ground. That summer in Bed-Stuy was also the beginning for some of Hollywood's biggest future stars. It was the very first movie for a young, funny comedian named Martin Lawrence, who played the neighborhood kid C. It was also the first time on screen for Rosie Perez, who played Mookie's girlfriend, Tina. Spike Lee had discovered her dancing in a Los Angeles club and knew she had a special energy that the movie needed. They were all just starting out, unaware that this one hot summer would change their lives forever. A Neighborhood Under Pressure. Making a movie on a real city block for 8 weeks is not easy. The neighborhood of Bed-Stuy was alive with energy, but it also had its dangers. The cast and crew felt a constant pressure, not just from the story they were telling, but from the world right outside their movie set. What most fans don't know is how Spike Lee managed that pressure, using both clever movie tricks and some very real and surprising protectors. First, there was the heat. To make the audience feel like they were sweating along with the characters, the filmmakers had to get creative. The cinematographer, Ernest Dickerson, came up with a brilliant trick. For some shots, he would light a can of Sterno, which is a type of canned fuel, and hold it just below the camera lens. The heat from the flame would create wavy lines in the air, making it look like the heat was so intense you could actually see it. They also painted the wall where the corner men sat a bright, fiery red and had the costume designer use hot, vibrant colors for the clothes. Every visual choice was made to scream heat. But there was another kind of heat on the block, the danger of crime. At the time, there were active crack houses in the neighborhood, and that brought a level of risk to the production. Spike Lee's solution was bold and controversial. He hired the Fruit of Islam to be the movie's security force. The Fruit of Islam is the security wing of the Nation of Islam, a black nationalist and religious organization. The men, dressed in their sharp suits and bow ties, were a powerful and disciplined presence on the set. They were polite and professional, but their message was clear. They went to the local drug dealers and told them that for the 8 weeks of filming, they needed to move their business around the corner. And they did. The Fruit of Islam created a safe bubble where the cast and crew could do their work without fear. Inside that bubble, a different kind of community formed. Many of the cast and crew described the set as feeling like a family. At the center of that family were two acting legends, Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee. They played Da Mayor and Mother Sister, the wise elders of the block. In real life, they were husband and wife and had been heroes of the civil rights movement for decades. On the set, they were the patriarch and matriarch, the respected mother and father figures who brought a sense of grace and history to the project. When a young actor had to curse at Ossie Davis in a scene, he was so nervous his legs were shaking. He apologized to the great actor, who just smiled and said, "Bring it on, whippersnapper. Do your job." Not everyone was in the middle of the action, however. Samuel L. Jackson, who played the radio DJ Mr. Senor Love Daddy, had a very different experience. All of his scenes were filmed inside the small radio station booth that looked out onto the street. He spent most of the 8-week shoot by himself, watching the rest of the cast work from behind a pane of glass. He later joked that he spent a lot of his time on set sleeping because he had no scenes outside, and he had often been up late the night before, hanging out with friends. One of those friends was Bill Nunn, who played Radio Raheem. The two were old friends from college. Nunn would often hang out with Jackson at his home in a basement apartment they nicknamed The Cave. It was a strange summer, a mix of real danger, tight security, and the warm feeling of a family coming together to create something important. When acting became too real. The story was so intense, and Spike Lee pushed his actors so hard to be real that sometimes the emotions became too much to handle. The pain, the anger, and the tears you see in the movie were not always just a performance. For the cast, making this film came at a real cost, leading to moments of physical pain, emotional breakdowns, and arguments that almost stopped the movie in its tracks. For Rosie Perez, her first time in a movie was a trial by fire. The film's famous opening credits, where she dances with incredible power and anger to the song "Fight the Power," is one of the most iconic openings in movie history. But the story behind it is painful. She danced for 8 hours straight on a hard, unforgiving concrete floor. Spike Lee kept pushing her for more energy, more passion, more anger. Rosie's body started to give out. Her back went out, she injured her knees, and by the end of the day, she was so hurt that she had to use crutches to walk. She remembered being on the verge of tears, so exhausted and furious with Spike that she couldn't even look at the camera. What many people thought was a sexy look was actually pure, unfiltered anger. The power you see in that dance came from her real pain. There was another difficult moment for Rosie on set. She was asked to do a nude scene with Spike Lee, who played her boyfriend, Mookie. Years later, she said the experience was horrible and that she was crying during the filming because she felt she had violated herself by not speaking up. It was a tough moment for a young actress in her very first film. She and Spike have since talked about it and made up, and they remain friends to this day. But it was a secret pain she carried for a long time. The tension wasn't just emotional, it was creative too. There was a huge argument on set that brought the entire production to a halt. It happened right before filming the big riot scene. In the script, Spike Lee wanted Sal, the pizzeria owner, to use the N-word in a moment of pure rage after Radio Raheem attacks him. But Danny Aiello refused to say the line. He argued with Spike, saying that Sal had served black customers for 25 years. He had watched their children grow up. No matter how angry he got, Danny believed Sal would never stoop to that level. Spike argued back that in a moment of extreme stress and violence, that hateful word would be the default position for a man like Sal. The two men, director and star, were at a standstill. It was a clash over the very soul of the character, and for a moment, no one knew how it would be resolved. The most intense moment of all came during the film's climax. When Buggin' Out and Radio Raheem confront Sal in the pizzeria, the scene explodes into violence. Giancarlo Esposito, who played Buggin' Out, later said that filming that scene was scary. He and Danny Aiello screamed terrible, racist insults at each other. For Giancarlo, who is half black and half Italian, it was deeply personal. He said that when he was looking at Danny, it felt like he was looking at his own father. The performance tapped into something so real and so painful for both actors that when Spike finally yelled, "Cut!" the two men collapsed into each other's arms and just cried. They had said horrible things to each other, and the emotions were too much to hold in. They looked over at Spike Lee, wondering if they had gone too far. But Spike was behind the camera with his arms stretched out, punching the sky in victory. He knew he had captured something true, something raw, and something that would shake audiences to their core. The explosion and the right thing. The movie's heartbeat is the song "Fight the Power" by the rap group Public Enemy. It blasts from Radio Raheem's boombox and becomes the anthem of the neighborhood's anger. But what most people don't know is that it was almost a completely different song. Spike Lee first asked Public Enemy for a new version of the song known as the Black National Anthem. Lift every voice and sing. The group sent him a song, but Spike didn't think it was right. He rejected it. So they went back and created the powerful, aggressive anthem that we all know today. One of the film's most memorable scenes is when Radio Raheem, played by the late, great Bill Nunn, explains the story of his love and hate rings. Holding up his brass-knuckled fists to the camera, He tells a story about the endless battle between good and evil. What many fans never figured out is that this powerful speech was a tribute to a classic old movie from 1955 called The Night of the Hunter, where a villain gives a similar speech. But Bill Nunn's quiet power and deep voice made the scene completely his own, turning it into a legendary movie moment. And then there's the biggest question of all. Why did Mookie throw the trash can through the window of Sal's Pizzeria? For years, a popular theory among fans was that Mookie did it to save Sal's life. The idea was that the angry crowd was about to attack Sal and his sons, so Mookie cleverly redirected their rage toward the building, sacrificing property to save a life. It's a smart theory, but Spike Lee himself has said it is completely false. The truth is much simpler and more powerful. Mookie threw the trash can because he was filled with grief and rage. He had just watched New York City police officers choke his friend, Radio Raheem, to death on the street right in front of his eyes. It was an act of pure, heartbroken anger. Over the years, Spike Lee has noticed something strange about that question. In an interview, he revealed a fascinating secret. In 20 years since the film came out, he said, "No black person ever asked me why Mookie threw the garbage can through the window. Only white people ask that question." For many black viewers, the reason for Mookie's rage was obvious. A life had been taken, and that was more important than a broken window. But for many white viewers, the destruction of property was the thing that was hardest to understand. The question itself showed how differently people saw the events of that night. When the movie was about to be released, many movie critics were afraid. They wrote articles saying that the film was dangerous and that it would cause riots in cities across America. The cast remembers the controversy and how worried people were. But in the end, none of the predictions came true. The movie didn't start riots, it started conversations. However, there was one famous person who was genuinely angry about the film: the legendary singer, Frank Sinatra. His picture was on Sal's Wall of Fame and got burned down in the fire. Years later, Spike Lee wanted to use one of Sinatra's songs in another movie, Jungle Fever. When he asked for permission, Sinatra's first response was, "Hell no, you burned my picture in Do the Right Thing." Eventually, they worked it out, but Sinatra never forgot. Where are they now? That one hot summer in Bed-Stuy didn't just create a classic movie, it launched a dozen careers into the sky. For many of the actors, Do the Right Thing was a turning point, a moment that changed their lives and put them on the path to becoming superstars. First, we remember the incredible actors who are no longer with us. Danny Aiello, who gave Sal such a powerful human soul, received an Academy Award nomination for his role. He went on to have a long and beloved career in movies like Moonstruck before he passed away in 2019. At his memorial, both Spike Lee and John Turturro spoke, remembering him as a funny, lovable, and deeply honest man. Bill Nunn became a cultural icon for his role as the strong, silent Radio Raheem. His character, with his boombox and love-hate rings, is one of the most recognizable in movie history. He continued to work in many films, including playing Robbie Robertson in the Spider-Man trilogy, until he died in 2016. And of course, there are the king and queen of the block, Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee. They were already legends before the movie, known for their incredible work on stage and screen and for their tireless activism during the civil rights movement. Do the Right Thing introduced their wisdom and grace to a whole new generation, and they continued to inspire people with their art and their courage for the rest of their lives. For the other actors, that summer was just the beginning. Samuel L. Jackson went from being the neighborhood DJ in a small booth to becoming one of the highest-grossing actors of all time. He has starred in everything from Pulp Fiction and Star Wars to the Marvel movies as the cool and commanding Nick Fury. He once told a funny story about how, right after the movie came out, he was walking down the street with Bill Nunn. People would stop Bill to ask for his autograph as Radio Raheem, but would walk right past Samuel L. Jackson without even noticing him. Things have certainly changed. Martin Lawrence, who had a small part as C, exploded into one of the biggest comedy stars of the 1990s. He got his own hit TV show, Martin, and starred in blockbuster movie franchises like Bad Boys and Big Mama's House. Rosie Perez, in her very first movie role, became an instant star. She went on to get an Academy Award nomination for the movie Fearless, became a famous choreographer for stars like Janet Jackson, and has been a powerful activist for Puerto Rican rights and HIV/AIDS awareness her whole life. The rest of the cast also went on to amazing careers. John Turturro, who played the hateful Pino, became one of the most respected actors of his generation, famous for his work with the Coen brothers in movies like The Big Lebowski, and for playing the villain Carmine Falcone in The Batman. He is now a director himself. And Giancarlo Esposito, who was so intense as the activist Buggin' Out, has become world famous for playing some of the greatest villains in television history, especially the cold and brilliant Gus Fring in the masterpieces Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Despite all this success, there was a shadow cast over the film when it was first released. In 1990, at the Academy Awards, Do the Right Thing was not nominated for Best Picture. Many people felt this was a huge mistake and a sign of racism in Hollywood. The award that year went to a much safer and softer movie about race driving Miss Daisy. But on the night of the Oscars, something shocking happened. The actress Kim Basinger was on stage to present an award. Instead of reading from the script, she stopped and spoke from the heart. She told the audience and the millions watching at home that there was one film missing from the list of nominees, a film that told the biggest truth of all. And that film, she said, was Do the Right Thing. It was a brave and stunning moment of protest that no one who saw it would ever forget. The story of the cast of Do the Right Thing is as powerful as the movie itself. It's a story about how art gets made, not in a quiet studio, but in the middle of the heat, pressure, and chaos of real life. The secrets they've shared show us that the movie wasn't just a job for them. It was an experience that pushed them to their limits, that made them cry real tears, and that forced them to confront their own beliefs. The fact that we are still talking about it, still debating it, and still learning from it proves that the power they fought for on that hot summer day in Brooklyn is still very much alive. The story of the cast is the story of the film, a timeless tale of heat, pressure, and the endless, complicated fight to do the right thing.